Download the free practice worksheet on this topic or take a practice quiz at Mathcation.com. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another awesome math video from Mathcation. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to find the least common multiple. As you can see, there are three important things that we need to remember when finding the least common multiple. The first thing we're going to do is that we're going to factor both numbers into their prime factors. Now, a prime factor is any number that only goes into itself and the number 1. The most common prime factors would be the numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11, and prime factors go on forever, but these are typically the ones that you'll be using. After you find the prime factors of each number, you write the prime factors in their exponent form. You'll use the prime factor as the base, and then the exponent will be how many times that factor occurred in the number. After you do that, you will multiply only the highest power of each factor together. You will use every prime factor, but you will only use the highest power of each prime factor. Once you list those out, you'll then multiply those factors together, and that will give you the least common multiple. And if you're learning anything right now, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on other helpful math videos. Let's go ahead and get started on our first practice problem on finding the least common multiple. This problem asks us to find the least common multiple between 12 and 40. Now what we're going to do is we're going to factor 12 and 40 using factor trees, but there are many different ways that you can factor these numbers. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to use factor trees. I'm going to go ahead and factor 12 and 40. Well, 12 is an even number, so I'm going to factor out a 2. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 is a prime factor, so I can stop. 6 is not, though, so I have to factor this again. This is an even number, so I'm going to factor out a 2, and 2 times 3 is 6. So that is 12 factored in the prime factors. Now we have two 2's. This is like saying 2 times 2, so that's 2 to the second power times 3. So 12 written out in prime factor form is 2 to the second power times 3. Now I have to factor out the number 40. I notice 40 ends in a 0, so I'm going to factor out a 10. 10 times 4 is 40. Then I'm going to factor 10, because it's not a prime factor, into 2 times 5. And 2 and 5 are both prime factors. So then I'm going to factor 4. 4 is 2 times 2. And both of those 2's are prime factors. Now I'm going to write 40 out in its prime factor form. Our first prime factor is 2. We have 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 times 2 is 2 to the third power, and that's going to be multiplied times 5, because we also have a 5 as a prime factor. So now I have 12 written out as 2 to the second times 3, and 40 written out as 2 to the third times 5. We have our numbers written out in prime factorization, and the factors written in exponential form. Now to find the least common multiple, we're going to take each prime factor, but only the highest power of that factor, and we're going to multiply them together. So for example, we have a prime factor of a 2, a 3, and a 5. So we have to use 2, 3, and 5 in our calculation for least common multiple. Now we're going to use the highest power of each factor. So in the case of 2, we have 2 to the second power, and we have 2 to the third power. We have to use the highest power. We're going to use 2 to the third power. The first part of our least common multiple calculation is going to be 2 to the third power times, and we're going to multiply that by the other factors. We have 3 and we have 5. Now technically this is 3 to the first and 5 to the first. We don't have another power of 3, and we don't have another power of 5. We're just going to use 3 to the first and 5 to the first because they are the highest power of each factor. So we're going to use 3 and we're going to use 5. So to find the least common multiple of 12 times 40, we're going to multiply 2 to the third times 3 times 5. And when we multiply those together, we will get 120. So the least common multiple of 12 and 40 is 120. And I got that because I multiplied the highest power of each factor together. Moving on to our second practice problem. This problem asks us to find the least common multiple between 25 and 80. I'm going to start with 25. 25 ends in a 5. I'm going to factor out a 5, and 5 times 5 is 25. 25 is just 5 times 5, listed out in factor form because 5s are prime. And then I have to factor out 80. Now 80 ends in a 0, so I'm going to factor out a 10, and 10 times 8 is 80. Neither of these are prime factors, so I have to factor them again. 10 is going to be 2 times 5, and 2 and 5 are prime factors. And then for 8, 8's an even number, so I'm going to factor out a 2. And then 2 times 4 is 8, and then 4 can be factored again into 2 times 2. So for 80, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 2s, so it's going to be 2 to the 4th power, and we have 1 5. So to find the least common multiple, I'm going to multiply each factor, but only the highest power of each factor. Now in this case, we only have factors of 2 and 5. We have to use the 2 that we have, which is 2 to the 4th, so we're going to use 2 to the 4th, and that's going to be multiplied times 5, but we have to use 5 to the 2nd power because this power of 2 is greater than the power of 1 here, so we're going to use 5 to the 2nd power. And when I multiply those together, I will get 400 for the least common multiple between 25 and 80. And we got that by multiplying the highest power of each factor together. And finally, our last practice problem asks us to find the least common multiple between 56 and 20. So I'm going to go ahead and start factoring these out. 56 is an even number, so I'm going to factor out a 2. 56 divided by 2 is 28. I notice that 28 is divisible by 7, so I'm going to factor out a 7, and this will be a 4. And then we're going to factor out 4 into 2 times 2. So the prime factors for 56 are 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 to the 3rd, times 7. And then we have to do the same thing for 20. So I'm going to factor out 20. This is 10. I notice 20 ends in a 0, so I'm going to factor out a 10. 10 times 2. And then 10 breaks down into 2 times 5. So 20 factored out is 2 times 2 times 5. So that's 2 to the 2nd power times 5. Now to find the least common multiple, we're going to multiply each factor, but the highest power of each factor. So our factors this time are 2, 5, and 7. So the highest power of 2 that we're going to use is 2 to the 3rd. We only have 1 5, so we have to use it, and we only have 1 7, so we have to use that. So we're going to multiply 2 to the 3rd times 5 times 7. And 2 to the 3rd times 5 times 7 is 280. So the least common multiple between 56 and 20 is 280. And we got that by multiplying the highest power of each factor together. And if you want to do some more practice on finding the least common multiple, go ahead and click the link in the top right part of this video to get taken to a free practice worksheet, as well as a free interactive quiz that grades itself and tells you how you did. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video if you got something out of it, and drop a comment telling me if this video helped you or if you need help with something else. See ya!